in the future? Perfect. All right. Well, welcome to our August session of the Buffalo Azure User Group. We also have the Rochester team joining us for this awesome session being delivered by, so excited to have one of my customers presenting today, Aleron. And we're going to have Eric Brady and Amanda Malecki delivering the session focused on BI, data analytics, and their journey through evaluating different solutions and really bringing out some really interesting results. So excited to hand it off. Eric, Amanda, the floor is yours.
Okay, thanks, Vanessa. Hello, everyone. Appreciate everyone taking the time today to hear our story. My name's Eric Brady. I'm the Director of Enterprise Applications here at Aleron.
Hey guys, I'm Amanda Malecki. I'm the Manager of Data Analytics of our BI department within IT here at Aleron.
Yep, and we're in a conference room, quarantined here in Williamsville, New York, presenting to you. So I don't know, I would say I'm probably a 2 on the BI, maybe 2.5. Learning a lot still.
Yeah, and I'd say I'm closer to a 4. Obviously, there's always something to learn, but using it day to day, I've definitely gained a lot of experience with the tool.
I would probably call myself maybe a 1.5 before this project. So, what we want to do is really tell you this story of how we went from kind of a more traditional legacy reporting structure to a pretty dynamic and sophisticated enterprise BI on the Azure platform. So our agenda here, I'll give you the high level of who we are and the kind of data and analytics we need, and then get into the fun stuff, the technology, talk about the project, how we were able to get this all up and running, and then some of the early but really great results we've seen leveraging the technology here. Beautiful Genesee River Valley. So the Aleron companies, we are a workforce solution provider based here in Buffalo, family owned. It was founded by one individual and just grew to quite a large company. And you might call us a staffing company, but it's much more nuanced than that. But really, at the end of the day, what we do is we provide our customers with excellent talent and workforce solutions across industry. And how we're organized, Aleron is a group of related companies, and Aleron Shared Resources is its own company. And you can think of it as a back office, so IT, where we're located, and HR and legal, and all of those services are provided to all of these in-house customers. And then, of course, they trickle down to their customers. So in IT, we have a large portfolio of internal stakeholders. And we are a global company. We have grown and scaled very quickly here over the years, providing these workforce solutions to large industry, Fortune 200s across the world. But with this rapid growth, we've also found ourselves in IT, especially catching up to some of the processes and automations that we need to have and expect in such a fast-growing field and company. So really, the story about our BI stand-up is part of that, how we went from a more rudimentary reporting capability to this enterprise version.
So with all of these companies and industries, what value does intelligence have to us? Well, we use it to answer questions. Where are we doing well? Where can we grow? Does higher volume necessarily equal higher profit? How efficient is our process? Are there gaps in that process that we can automate? And how are we trending year over year? We also do quite a few client reports so that our clients can answer those questions based on our performance.
So we had reporting right before we stood up this platform, but it wasn't always efficient, and it could take some time to run reports to get them out of those source systems. There were times when the data really wasn't governed, so maybe some downstream operational error created a data error. Sometimes human processes created some issues within the reports. And really, there was not an integrated view of our data. Each system was kind of siloed. And because of that, we had, these siloed operations and really independent report development teams and systems running in parallel, supporting their own business or department. And, there's really a need out there for a more enterprise-grade solution. So, executives were telling us, they're finding out they're losing money too late. Or maybe they're getting different versions of the same report and they just don't trust the data values. Or, it's just taking a lot of employee time or FTE time to run these reports. So, there's all these multiple voices happening within the company recognizing these needs, but it hadn't yet been a led effort. Things came really together in 2018, at the end of 2018. So in our strategic plan, BI was identified as a real priority for the company. So this was coming from the top. And then in the meantime, IT leaders, we were going around canvassing, talking to the same leadership tier, saying, hey, there's some great technologies out there. We'd love to build these out for you. We see how there can be value. And through that process, we had a lot of great candid conversations and a lot of trust building. And here in red, don't underestimate how important it is to have those outreach, to really have those conversations with stakeholders so they'll buy into the solution, so they'll trust it. I think that really underpinned our success from the beginning. So IT, we were positioned to lead the project. We said we can do it. And ultimately, the result was the ownership of the company said, we want to do this. We see the need. And early last year, they said, let's do it. And you've got a year to complete. So we were really excited, a little nervous, aggressive time frame, and not a huge budget, but we were really excited to jump in. And so what we called it was the BI StandUp Project. I always referenced it as a race to the starting line. We weren't looking to finish the project and have all of these reports complete or replaced, but really build the foundation. And as we looked at the project, we were trying to balance a few things. Speed and cost. So we had this deadline, but we also had a small budget. So rather than just paying vendors to do everything, we really wanted to leverage our own in-house capabilities and team to do production work. We also wanted to make sure that we could support that production work with technologies that we knew how to use. We didn't want to have to ramp up and learn a lot of new things. And then, we recognize we're not going to know everything up front, so let's take a more agile approach, right? We'll have a guiding design, but let's reuse what we can up front, kind of find those low-fruit opportunities to get some wins. And as we looked at the technology and the platform and where it would go after this project, we really, we had to own it ourselves. We couldn't rely on vendors to do all the work, to maintain it, to grow it. This platform had to be flexible. We knew, new things come up all the time. And it had to, this platform work with our current systems and our security requirements, which, are growing ever more of a focus for our operations in IT. And then, finally, at the end of this project, we didn't want to just say, okay, we're done, and oh no, you don't have any reports. That's another phase. We wanted to have some wins. We wanted to show the value right away. So that's kind of how we focused and framed our work.
Okay, so then we get into the project phases and the team roles. We spent about 5 months in the planning and design phase. This was deciding which tools to use, how we were going to design it, the schema, which systems were going to be included. From there, we needed to meet with the SMEs for each of those independent systems to understand their individual data models. And then we merged each of these 3 siloed reporting teams into one master, department, one single department that could be embedded within IT. We also met with our vendors, and they helped us out with the system architecture and the schema design. So our core systems that we're going to be working with are Smart Search. So this is used for the hiring process as a recruitment organization to fill client jobs. Aleron's WorkNexus homegrown software is used by the clients to share with recruitment agencies to help them fill their jobs. SAP is our financial system used for payroll processing and billing. And then Dynamics is our sales tools used by our account executives for new account development.
And, you know, we a lot of other small systems, but we wanted to focus on the big ones. So we started off with an assessment project. You might call it a gap analysis. And this is something we led ourselves internally. We had this small budget. We saw we could save some money doing that. I had led similar projects and processes before with others. And so we said, hey, we think we can do this. And we also recognized we've got a trust factor with our stakeholders, with these businesses and departments. We've been talking to them, they knew us, and we wanted to maintain and build that relationship. And we also wanted to do it as quick as we could and not have to go through that RFP process. So there was about 10 stakeholder groups, some of the bigger businesses, and then on the shared resource side, that back office, all the departments we were speaking to about their needs. And a very, common assessment approach where we sent out a survey, we had interviews, we inventoried existing reports, we got samples, and then a lot of follow-up and validation, just, really trying to be high touch with these internal customers to help with that change management, to make sure that they felt comfortable and they trusted we were representing their needs. So the output was this assessment report and some draft designs around the architecture and the data. And these became inputs into that implementation RFP. So it was a very helpful document. And then, of course, again, the stakeholders really got excited when they saw what we were looking for. And part of those assessments, what we identified and found out about what was happening was, within the current reporting, there were definitely gaps. So some of these were automated or maybe semi-automated, but they were slow to generate. So for instance, in our older SAP instance, we're on ECC, it could take, many hours to output a report that had a huge data set. Some of the tech was a little older, so we were exporting data automatically, but, it was in older formats like CSV. And we had processes to dump data, but then, there was the same human effort every month to maybe consolidate it, to finalize it. And all of these platforms and all of their reports were independent in that sort of siloed approach. And then, of course, lots and lots of Excel work. It's still there. I think it probably always will. But humans, sometimes we make mistakes, and so there's occasional errors, some formatting, and just a cost to doing this. So those were ways we could address the current reporting, but there was also some new things people were looking for, and this really excited us in IT. New data sets to bring into the warehouse, really looking for that self-service, ease-of-use functionality for those executive users. We wanted to extend this to our customers, which we've done. And they're very clear and firm on this idea that as businesses and as stakeholder departments, they wanted to own and control reporting to the extent that made sense, but also in partnership with IT, where we would govern and support the platform in a matrix organization. But the number one need we heard, and really from the senior tier, was this goal of getting all of our enterprise platform data married up to do really good analysis from when we first had an opportunity at a sales side all the way to the billing end, to really have visibility on that versus that operational reporting we had in place.
Okay, so now that we know we need to use a new tool, it was a matter of figuring out which one to use. So we already had some familiarity with Cognos as we were using an older version of it, and we knew Tableau and Power BI to kind of be the industry leaders. So it was just kind of narrowing it down, seeing what was going to be a better fit for us. It really came down to ease of use, scalability, and cost. We have like over 100 users, many of them being guest users who are not sitting in our Active Directory. And with Power BI, we were able to kind of leverage that so that we had a single sign-on for everyone, and we could add guest users. We could also embed our reports within Teams and SharePoint. So that ended up being the ultimate decision to move forward with Power BI.
Yeah, we liked it from the start, and the more we looked at it as a platform, it just made more and more sense for us. So we had our assessment, we knew what the needs were, we knew what our platform was, so let's start designing how to deliver it. And so this draft architecture, we also led this, and it was kind of a phase of the first project. A lot of us had built transactional databases and we had software development backgrounds, so we had a confidence we could do this, but we knew we didn't know a lot. So lots of research, lots of demos, and we engaged a number of vendors to help us. And really, we were asking, can you please validate our design ideas? And we did this on marketing time. We were upfront saying there's going to be an implementation project, and we're really interviewing you as a vendor to understand, if it'll work with us. And so we got some great free advice on, our ideas and a lot of input to kind of change those ideas. And of course, Microsoft was very helpful, not only as the online content and trainings, but just a lot of great experts were made available to us and really helped guide us as we looked at this platform. And then everybody, we all agreed, we saw, okay, let's leverage the Azure platform as a service for BI, especially Azure SQL. And well, we learned a lesson here we'll talk about.
So for our draft design, we knew we needed a few core components. We needed an ETL process to move the data from all of these core systems into one data warehouse. Obviously, we needed to set up that data warehouse. We needed a SQL warehouse that we could leverage a lot of the SQL queries that we had already built for existing reports. And we knew we needed a way to get that data into Power BI. And in doing some research, we knew that querying directly from Power BI wasn't going to be the best performance-wise. So we were looking at analysis services to meet that need, but it was still on a very, we were exploring it. We didn't really know what it could do, but we were interested in finding out.
Mm-hmm. So we had our draft, and we finally moved to our RFP and implementation. We hired two great vendors, time and material contracts, 3Cloud, who was formerly Applied Cloud. They were tasked with the Azure build, and then Ironside Group were tasked with the data modeling. And really a lot to say, great things with these two teams. We ran 3 parallel work streams. So I was the project manager. It was a very busy time. So we were doing the Azure architecture build out. We were running data modeling working group sessions. And then, the Power BI report development came a little later as we had more content to work with. Every day we had a stand-up and just did a lot of coordination, and a lot of our team, again, was working and helping. So it was a fun, exciting, and very busy time. So let's get into some of these, phases or work streams. So the Azure Buildout, we had to build this back end from the design, and yes, platform as a service, looking at Azure SQL as the database, but we found out that, oh my gosh, no, we can't use it. And it was only a few weeks in that we realized, once we really talked about our processing, that this does not support scheduling. We had an orchestration of our existing SSIS agent, which was an ETL, and it just wasn't going to work with Azure SQL. So what do? Well, no fear, we'll just stand up a managed instance, which is essentially a virtual server with SQL Server installed, but a managed instance requires networking and the security, and networking requires the help of our very busy infrastructure team, and they had a big backlog in queue. So they were very accommodating to us, and we were able to work through this together, but it did add a delay and a little bit of cost to our original plan and design to get this architecture and the network architecture built out. So a lesson learned, we saved money up front by doing the assessment and the draft design and kind of leveraging those free opportunities. But we just didn't know Azure well enough to spot this gap, and working with our vendors, we weren't able to provide enough information in the context of their services at the time. All in all, I think it was still very valuable for us to be hands-on in those design sessions. It really helped us learn it. We weren't having a vendor just coming and telling us. We knew what we wanted from what was out there. But all IT projects always seem to have a little hiccup.
Okay, so after many conversations with Ironside and 3Cloud, we finally have our final architecture. So instead of a platform as a service, we're using the managed instance with 4 or 5 managed databases within that instance. So the data runs through Data Factory. into the managed instance, and then from there we create a tabular model and analysis services, and then the data is brought into Power BI where it is consumed by business users. We're also leveraging Active Directory for security, and that is maintained in analysis services. And then for on-prem databases, that's going through the necessary firewall in order to secure the data.
Hey, Eric, are you guys able, can you dial in one more time? I apologize. I think there was some feedback.
Vanessa, this is Frank. I don't know if you can hear me, but they're upstairs. I'm sure they'll be able to if that's
Okay.
what you need them to do.
Yeah, perfect. I think I muted the 631 number by accident, and I can't get them off of mute now. So.
Okay. Yeah, I will. I'll make sure that I'll go up if they don't do that in a minute or so.
Unless you came off of mute. I see you trying to do that, Eric.
Okay, we're going to go through the laptop. Can you?
Yeah, we can hear you perfect.
Oh, I have to.
Yeah, we can hear you great.
Okay, great. So what we were saying about IT, and sometimes there's a hiccup. Okay, so we'll get going here. Let me just get into presentation mode. How far back did you?
I think it was just when I said that.
Yeah,
Okay.
no, this is perfect. It was just about a minute or so.
Okay, all right, we're going to jump right back in.
Should this one?
Yep, and
Okay.
we're going through the laptop audio.
All right, so data modeling. So we knew we needed to move the data over to the managed instance. Now we just need to figure out which tables from which systems are going to be moved over. So for this, we need to know what's actually being used for reporting today. So we met with the SMEs for each of those systems to understand, what columns were used, what tables, understand the, schema of the database so that we could, write new queries, create relationships. We also needed to locate the delta for each of these tables so that we could identify when a row was refreshed. And we needed to meet with the business to understand how often they needed that database to be refreshed. So for Smart Search, it's a high volume, high traffic database. So that's about twice a day. For SAP, things move a little bit slower. So that's about once a week. We also needed to do additional data modeling for WorkNexus and SAP. So for WorkNexus, we had 24 similar but not identical client databases that we needed to bring into one single managed database. And for SAP, some of those reports, as Eric had mentioned, could take overnight to run. We would just let it sit for hours. So we needed a star schema to, make that process more efficient. And for CRM, we utilized the common data model. So that was an easy button. That was simple, unlike the other ones, but it was nice to have that one be a little bit easier.
Yeah. Okay, so star schema design. A lot of us here had not worked with the star schema before, more, familiar with the transactional database. And if you don't know what a star schema is, it's essentially remodeling the data for report consumption. Traditionally, those relational databases are designed for the application. So we went through a lot of iterative design with our vendors here to get through and understand this. It took a little time for me to kind of get my head around it, but once I did, at least, it really became clear how effective and important this would be, because we just had so much data and we really wanted to make it easy to build some key report deliverables for the project, but really to position the database and the SAP information in the warehouse for future reporting. One benefit to this project, because we were rebuilding existing reports, making them more self-service, we had old reporting we could use for QA. So we did a lot of apple to apple, looking at result sets straight out of SAP and then matching against our queries. And that was very effective for us.
Okay, so analysis services. This is definitely a core piece of our process. We use analysis services all the time, especially when you're getting something stood up. It's an in-memory tabular model. You create them in Visual Studio, and then once they're complete, you deploy up to analysis services. So in Visual Studio, when you're building this tabular model, you're managing your table of relationships, your calculations. You're able to remove duplicates and replace errors to really clean the data. Analysis services also manages user access and row level security, which is nice. And if for some reason you didn't want to use Power BI anymore, you're able to pivot to another BI tool without much rework. So you can just use that existing model that you've built out.
Yeah, and we talked about self-service for our customers. This really helps us organize the data so it's intuitive to them when they see it, column names, things like that.
Okay, so this is kind of like a simplified architecture of our current process, just to show you the flow of the data. So, we have our core systems going through Data Factory to Visual Studio to Power BI. The nice thing about this is that you can add third-party sources such as Avature, Excel, Smartsheet, and maybe a URL from the web, and you can bring them right into Visual Studio and mix them with your, your database data. And you can apply row-level security through Active Directory to those native sources as well as those third-party sources. So it just allows you to kind of make multiple data sets work together, even if a new one pops up that you need to report on.
That was the flexibility we looked for, Okay, so that was the build. And so what are the results? Well, it ended up being a 12-month project. So we almost made our deadline, but we had some great wins right off the bat. So in no particular order, we were able to stand up self-service and visualizations for some key reports that were in Excel. It took a lot of time, a lot of Amanda's time to build these every week or month. So now they're there and available and very intuitive. A lot of that manual report development was replaced through this automation. And that's continuing to grow. So every report we put out, we reduce that production time from an analyst. We had some great new analytics right off the bat with our existing data, just being able to combine it and visualize it in ways we hadn't before. So that was, these are all within the first month or so of our project completing. Our SAP financials were now on demand, so executives could go in and see how their businesses were performing and really, get in and slice this data and filter it to their needs, either by dates or regions and customers. Much better and easier way to see how the business was doing. A correlated thing, we didn't know this would happen. We had some hope, but Smart Search, the reporting in Smart Search prior was all against the transaction database of the application. So when there was heavy reporting times, the application would slow down. Now that we had moved it to the warehouse, performance really increased. And then we had kind of a surprise opportunity at the end of the project where a new WorkNexus customer came in the door, and the decision was, well, do we go with Cognos, which we know, or do we take a risk and put this WorkNexus data into Power BI? And we hadn't done a tremendous amount at this point, but we were very smart people and ambitious, and so we did it. We, in just over a week, really were able to put together 15 common reports to support this customer. And the great win was not only did we show the business we could do it and show ourselves we could do it, but this template of reports really became the foundation of a lot of the future work of migrating those remaining Cognos reporting capabilities into Power BI. And huge efficiencies in report reduction because now we had the filters built in and we allowed users to kind of drill through the data where we had a one-off report for each of those views.
Hey, Eric, we have a question in the chat window.
Okay.
So Garrett is interested in understanding how many people and how many different teams were involved in the project.
Yeah, great question. So up front, it was just the Aleron IT team with our business partners, in-house business partners. And then once we launched, we had both IT and we do have a slide with a few of the positions, but we really worked closely with those application SMEs. So in IT, we'll support the platforms that they're using, the applications like SAP, but we're not necessarily the experts of the data, where and how data is stored. So they were very involved. Maybe that'll help answer the question.
Yeah, and I think too, if you're wondering, like, so there were definitely a lot of hands on deck when we were standing this up as far as the infrastructure side, our vendors, but maintaining it moving forward with like the current platform, it's really just the, you know, our DBA and the team of analysts who are managing this. So about 5 people are doing the day-to-day from this point forward.
And steady state.
Eric, I think you're going to talk about this a little bit later, but just another comment from Garrett as well was, are there any opportunities today for anything in the low code platform to apply to a mobile app port directly onto that platform?
Yes. So we'll talk a little bit about where we're going with the Power Platform, but yes, absolutely, Garrett.
All right, so let's talk about some of the efficiencies we've experienced since moving over to Power BI. So before, you had to be an SME for that system in order to report on the data because you had to understand their data structure. Now with analysis services, you know, when people are connecting to this data set in Power BI, it's a user-friendly version. Their errors are removed. It's built for reporting, so it's simple. As far as reduced report counts, so we built one report for one of our customers that has, you know, maybe 15 reports embedded within it, and we're able to use that same template for multiple customers. So it's kind of like build it once, use it forever. And that obviously saves hours because now we're not creating duplicate versions of the same report. Some of the increased use of SQL and some of the calculated functions have allowed us to automate a lot of our manual reports, and that, you know, is saving us up to 15 hours in a single week. And as far as our team, for them to be moving to one, you know, consolidated BI team within IT, it's enabled our team to be more collaborative, to shift our focus and work as a team on what the business needs are, not just on what that system is. And it enables them to, you know, have more knowledge, to grow as individuals and to focus more on analysis versus administrative tasks.
Yeah, really looking to leverage the human potential of our really smart people rather than have them just kind of heads down building the same report over and over. Let's get them doing analysis with the data. So that's been exciting. And there was just a bullet before where we actually consolidated all of these different reporting teams that were kind of spread out and siloed all into IT, as Amanda referenced, and that was very helpful, and best practices, etc.
All right, so now I'm just going to show you guys some of the samples that we've built, and keep in mind these were granular Excel documents before with hundreds of rows, and you had to just read through it to try to understand it. So now this is a version of a client report. You know, right off bat they can see how many job openings they have, how many people are on assignment, how their invoices are trending, meaning their overall spend, and how their volume is over month. And these are all interactive. So if I were to click on a month, it would change, you know, the number of openings, the number of terms, the number of invoices to meet that filter.
Yeah, and we're showing you some screenshots instead of live just because there's a lot of proprietary data and just easier to do it this way. But very interactive Power BI apps.
Okay, and this is an example of an account executive overview that is used by our sales team to kind of track their progress. So, you know, on the map, you can see where we're filling jobs, and maybe in the gray areas are areas that we can grow. We can see placements we've made or hires we've made on new accounts that we've just closed. What types of jobs we're filling, so, you know, pay level, job category, and we can also see team performance. So how does everyone rank up to one another?
Mm-hmm. Great visibility.
And this is the third and final report, that we're showing today. This is more of an executive report that is used when we're going to renew our contracts with our job boards, such as Monster and Indeed. It allows us to see how these job boards stack up against one another and how we're trending overall month over month. And we can also see, how many hires we have from each source. We can change to the type of candidates that are being attached. And it's just very interactive, very user-friendly. And I know whenever our vendors come on site and we print this out for them, they get really excited that they get to see, how they can rank. So, we obviously love to use it internally, but I think a lot of outside, vendors and clients love it as well.
And maybe, Amanda, we didn't have a slide, but talk about, Power BI apps and how you've got lots of reports all in one location. It's URL-based, security-based.
Yeah, so essentially you create the report in the desktop app, and then you publish it up to the web. And in the web, it's stored in a workspace, kind of like Teams, just the groups, the workspaces. But there's different security. So you can just have the developers in the workspace, and then once it's finalized, you can publish it to an app. So say there are some reports that you don't want to be in the app, but some that you do, you can turn them on and off to be included in the app. And the app allows people to view the reports without necessarily being able to edit them. So it's kind of like a read-only view, but it's still interactive. So it gives us the control of the data, but the end user still the flexibility that they like. End users can also export data to Excel, which has been really helpful as people are transitioning to, using a web version of the report as, for their analysis, which is definitely a change.
Yeah, and on the operations side, right? So an executive may say, hey, can I see one more piece of data? Or, hey, can I get the latest report? It's all here. When they go to that website through their secure Active Directory logon, the data is always the latest, greatest. It's always refreshed. As changes to sort of the template might be requested, it's done once and available to everyone. So it is really streamlined, getting good information right to the hands of our users when they want it and as they need it.
Hey, Eric. We have another question from Adam about the transition to Power BI and if it was difficult from a skilling perspective and any technical hurdles in those conversations and basically just the onboarding and end user adoption.
Yeah, so I think Power BI was kind of the easier piece to learn. I'd say the more complicated part was analysis services. We were all new to the tabular model, and everyone's SQL skills varied. Power BI has so much content available online through Microsoft. They have a full blog, they have videos, so I think that piece was a little bit easier, and also cross-training. So we kind of tried to task the team with learning different parts of the process and becoming really good at those pieces, and then meeting up and transferring that knowledge, which really helped.
Yeah, certainly the technical people, I think, picked it up very quickly and we're supporting it. Wasn't a huge learning curve per se. Now it's more pivoting towards those end users, trying to find like executives who really want to embrace this and training them, working with analysts in the departments, training them. But it's a very intuitive system. I've been in IT for a long time. It was easy for me to understand and learn. So that was, we recognized that in the beginning, and it's really proving itself out here. So hopefully it answers your question.
Thanks.
Okay, let's see. Okay, so what are the challenges? It's never all easy button. And really, I think now probably the biggest one is just a high demand for more report building and more app development. As we said, this was really a project to race to the starting line. We're now into the real race, building out these capabilities, and demand is there. But we have a smaller team, so we are really trying to focus on priority reporting and development. So we've got Amanda as our manager and our tech lead, so she's really driving the innovation here on the design side. And then we have 3 report builders who are ramping up and supporting report development and analysis, more and more wanting them to do more analysis work. And then our SQL DBA, who's really sharp and has been super critical to our project here. And let's see, we have a big project going on, this Cognos migration. So all those Work Nexus reports we're putting in Power BI. We've got beat the relicensing deadline, right? So we don't want to have two platforms running at once. So that's taken a little focus, but we're in good shape. You know, I don't know if we'll ever truly get out of the reactive proactive balance, but now that executives have seen what we can do and they're really excited, we got a lot of requests, and that continues. Change management, as intuitive as it is, there are some people who just like Excel, and so working with them, training them. Maybe a little bit the Azure admin portal, just sort of trying to navigate that and position somebody in our team to really own it and support it. We don't touch it too much now, but certainly when we were standing it up, there's a lot to learn. Take this one.
Sure. So next steps, you know, there's always more to do. So we're looking for more self-service apps. I think, you know, part of the challenge too is that Power BI isn't necessarily built for just simple ad hoc reports. So we've kind of made that work by using filters and kind of anticipating their needs. So we're looking to kind of build that out on that to eliminate us having to do those ad hoc requests. We're also looking to do some work with Power Apps to get some of the app data embedded into Power BI. We need to formalize our data governance plan. We need to continue to train our team, formalize our request process. We're kind of in a mix between the old, you know, business only side and moving into more of an IT Scrum methodology of doing things. And then BI for shared service departments, HR, legal. So we're looking to expand our service offerings to other departments within the organization.
Yeah, and I'm going to jump back to the Power Apps and the Power Platform. There's the question about mobile. So this was really attractive to us, and now we're really seeing the benefits where that low-code, no-code development process where our developers or even analysts can stand up an application that has responsive design so it can work on a phone, and its data or data from any other system that's housed and Power BI can access, we can embed a report right into that mobile app without much development. And that's really a huge benefit we're just starting to explore. You know, and then long term, you know, this is the promise of BI, I think generally, but really more and more looking at predictive with market intelligence and on our sales side, trying to get ahead of the curve of what kind of positions industry is looking for. Currently, we buy data similar to what we're producing, you know, what positions are being placed at what rates and where. So we want to resell our data. I think that's something we're going to start looking at seriously. Of course, AI and machine learning, standing up a more formal BI center of excellence organization, maybe pull it out of IT eventually to truly be supporting the organization. You know, and then global support, bringing in more of our international partners and businesses, well, they have access to this, really giving them more high touch than our current phase. So lots to do. We're really excited about it. It's just been a great project. We all love to learn something new, and being successful with it, you know, has made us all feel really good. So I think that's our presentation. Hopefully people enjoyed it and could learn something. And we have a little time. It looks like 15 minutes. So
yeah, no, it's perfect. So Venkat, if you would like to come off of mute and ask your question, now would be a perfect time. And if you would rather not, I can ask it as well. Just talking about the expected challenges in moving from on-prem base to Power BI.
Well,
okay. I'm sorry. Yeah, that was my question. I have a customer who are heavily into OBIE since several years. Now they are thinking about moving towards Azure. Obviously, the warehouse also has to be in Azure.
Right. So part of our design consideration was, you know, do we hit those transactional databases directly? And we didn't want to do that. We didn't want to impact performance. We didn't want to worry about network latency, all of those things. So we really built call it parallel copies of those databases, and then remodeled it in either a star schema and then ultimately analysis services for report consumption. But when we talked about moving those transaction databases into the warehouse, Data Factory was the component, and this was a true, platform as a service component. It was pretty straightforward to use, just pointing to those databases and then mapping out data between the two systems, the source and target database. We did have a logic app that our vendor A3 Cloud developed for us, and that was really helpful for configuring. But probably one of the key things that we looked at was that delta strategy. We didn't want to copy the whole database over every night. There's just too many millions of rows. So we did a lot of analysis to say, okay, what was the change date column on each table? Let's look at that and only take records that were either, through the CRUD, or they were either new or updated or deleted, and try to marry that into the Azure database. So really minimize the amount of data we were pulling over either nightly or a couple times a day.
Thanks, Eric. Garrett, did you want to come off of mute and ask your question?
Sure. Hey, great presentation, by the way. Good information. So I had a question about the infrastructure and how you approach that. Are you guys using any infrastructure as code tools like Terraform or CM tools like Chef, Ansible, things like that? Or did you just kind of build the environment and there it is?
So I think we really relied heavily on our vendors as far as setting up the managed instance. We knew we didn't know everything we needed to know to build that and set that up. So I don't believe we are using any of those tools. I think it's just going through Data Factory, and then we have our Azure managed instances. We have a few VMs that we use, a few gateways, but I don't think we're using any of those tools that I know of.
Yeah, and we're so at Aleron, our IT is split between infrastructure and dev. We're in the dev house. Our infrastructure guys aren't on the call, but they would be the ones to speak to that. We are a Cisco shop, so we did, set up a permanent VPN through our networks up to those network servers in Azure. They all have IPs that are recognized, and we can access them. I could go right from my desktop here securely up into those servers. How we do it under the hood, I leave it to those other smart guys to what tools to pick.
Okay, thank you very much.
Sort of a punt, but.
Yeah, and Garrett, I would say that you win the award for coolest home office lighting.
You like that? Yeah.
Yeah, very cool.
It's home office, recording studio, gaming facility for my kids.
Super cool. We have about 10 minutes left, so if anyone else would like to chime in and ask some additional questions, now is the time.
Vanessa, I'm curious, how did the polling go?
So it actually, we had a lot of comments. So we had a pretty wide range of responses. I would say 2 was probably the most common on the scale of 1 to 5. So yeah, we had probably about 8 to 10 people vote there and a few thumbs up along the way. So yeah, I would say 2. But this idea of the business asking for better reporting and the ability to manipulate and slice and dice reports, and the partnership between IT, I think is something that most organizations are, if they haven't worked through it yet, they probably will be. So I think your story is likely resonating with a lot of people on this call today.
Yeah, that change management, having been a project manager, wearing that hat for a long time, it's so important to build those relationships and have those partnerships.
Yeah, and like you guys both talked about, you buy a lot of the data that you're producing today. I thought that was such an interesting call out. And then this idea of what does that future state look like and how could you potentially monetize the data that you're producing now, and really, impact the products and services that you sell to your customers. And so I think that that's where that future proofing and innovation starts to come in. Really thoughtful.
Yeah, sort of the value proposition with our customers, it's not just coming and saying, here's a report of what's going on. It's really consultative. We go in and we show them which positions are being filled, or maybe where there's gaps in their organization, there's continually openings, they're not able to find the headcount they need. So having a great story to tell through visualizations is really a key to what we offer our customers. And now we've made it just so much easier to produce and more intuitive to see. So there's a lot of excitement on the business end about this capability for them.
Yeah. Garrett's asking another question around whether or not you've presented a margin POC on that effort. And maybe you mentioned it already, but just if you could touch on that.
Yeah, so in the beginning, obviously we didn't wait until everything was built before we started developing reports. We wanted to kind of get rolling as soon as we could. So once that managed instance was stood up, we started building out proof of concepts on all of our source systems. SAP, we were working with, the vendor on that. So that one was a little bit slower for, proof of concept wise, but for Smart Search, WorkNexus, CRM, we definitely had proof of concepts set up, and we were sharing those and getting feedback and kind of making sure we were going in the right direction before we went too far in the process.
Yeah, so the gross margin report was one of the key early deliverables with the project. And it was great because it was this huge spreadsheet that took forever to produce, and now it's just this self-service, intuitive GUI. You can still get in and get into every single row, but the summarization has really been helpful, and it's always up-to-date data. So we had a few different flavors of financials, profit and loss, and some other reports that came as outputs to that star schema design phase. And now we've got a lot more that are lined up that we're gonna build here in the coming time.
Awesome. Carl, I'll let you have the opportunity to ask your question if you'd like.
Okay, sure. Hopefully everybody can hear me.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yeah, so I just had a question about the need to go to SQL managed instances over the PaaS SQL offering, and whether you had considered Data Factory as a solution to run the SSIS or SSIS integration runtimes versus, falling back to or deciding on the managed instance approach.
Yeah, great question. At the time, I think we were following the recommendation of our vendors on this. So that was what was recommended for whatever the details of that SSIS package and the sequencing and the timing we had to run it. It was identified the managed instance was the way to do it. And I'll say this too, what we've already recognized with Azure and Power BI, there's just this constant investment and upgrade. So possibly that capability is newer than when we were looking at it. But maybe an opportunity to look back. We talked about balancing the project, sort of speed over perfect design. And I think we could look back and say, hey, we could, maybe consolidate some of these things and rework them to save a little bit of money on our footprint. But, we see more value in just using what we have and then producing these reports at this time, with the focus on getting BI value to our users.
Gotcha. Okay.
But we'll look into that. Thank you.
Yeah, it just seemed like, you had Data Factory already, and it advertises, a capability like that as far as scheduling data pipelines, et cetera.
Yeah, Carl, this is actually Josh Eckert. I'm the SQL DBA over here at Aleron. Actually, we do have one of our SSIS jobs running through Data Factory for part of our ETL process. It does kick off as part of the sequence. So we are utilizing it to some degree.
Gotcha. Thanks.
Thank you.
Great question. If anyone else has something to say, now would be a good time. Otherwise, as we wrap things up, I just wanted to say thanks again to the Aleron team for taking the time to put this presentation together. The Azure User Group is for the Buffalo community and Rochester community, and we're always looking for our community organizations to deliver the presentation, and Microsoft is here just as a platform to give you the time and space to be able to share your story. So thank you so much for the presentation and helping us move maybe from a 2 to a 3 in our interest and experience around BI and analytics. So thanks again so much to the Aleron team, and I will be downloading this presentation, and we will go ahead and post it to the GitHub, and I can put that link in the meetup so everyone has the ability to reference this in the future. And yeah, many thanks to everyone for taking the time to join us today.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.